Before we start this video, do like and subscribe to our channel and not miss on any updates.
Hello everyone. So let's start with the paper analysis of paper 2 part A, business laws. So the paper was easy overall. However, there were a few topics which were touched upon for the very first time. And that's the reason why many students had some confusion that what is this question about. So let's start with the paper analysis and quickly do it. So the first question here was based on appropriation of payments or from the Indian Contract Act. Let's see what the question says. So T owes G the following debts as per the table given below. So we have different amounts of debts and different dates which have been given. Let's look at the question further. G makes the payment on 1st of April 23. So what is the date of payment? The date of payment is 1st April 2023 without any notice regarding how to appropriate the payment. So the debtor has not given any notice of how the payment has to be appropriated. What are the payments? A check of 12,500 and a check of 4,000. In such a situation, how the appropriation of the payment is done? By assuming that T also has not appropriated the amount which has been received. So what is the situation here? Under appropriation of payments, we have understood that it has to be either it has to be appropriated in a manner in which the debtor decides. If the debtor has not given any directions, then the creditor can himself appropriate the payment according to his desire. However, when both the debtor and creditor do not do it, then the debt shall be settled in the order of time. So let's see the payments. So the first due was on 1st of April 2022. So this is the first so this is the first date here. So we have received a check, a payment check of 12,500. So that check should be appropriated here. In the order of time, the first date which comes here is 1st April 2022. So the check of 12,500 should be appropriated here. The second check which has been received is a check of 4,000 rupees. Now there's the other debt which comes is due on 1st July. It is time barred on 1st July 23. So we'll appropriate the 4,000 rupees check here against this 5,000. So in the order of time, we'll do the settlement. Moving on to the next question. The state government of X, a state in the country holding 48 lakh shares of Y Limited. So state government of X holds 48 lakh shares of Y Limited. The paid up capital of Y Limited is 9.5 crore, which consists of 95 lakh shares. So the total capital includes 95 lakh shares. Now, in order to become a government company, the holding has to be 51% or more, either by state government or central government or by both of them together. So here the holding of the government is 48 lakhs. However, the total capital is 95 lakhs. Now, when we calculate the holding percentage, it comes to somewhere around 50.5%, which is less than 51%, which means Y Limited is not a government company. Okay, let's move ahead in the question. Y Limited directly holds 2,50,600 shares of Z Private Limited, which is having a capital of 5 crore in the form of 5 lakh shares. So again, Y Limited is holding some shares in Z Private Limited, and the total capital of Z Private Limited is 5 lakh shares. However, Y Limited, it holds 2,50,600 shares in Z Private Limited. Now, what is happening here is Z Private Limited claimed the status of a subsidiary company of Y Limited as well as government company. Now, when does a company become a subsidiary company? When the other company has holds or exercises control over more than 50% of the total share capital. Now, 50% of 5 lakh comes to 2,50,000, and here the holding is 2,50,600, which means Y Limited holds more than 50%, has more than 50% voting power in Z Limited. So yes, Z Limited becomes Y Limited subsidiary. As a legal advisor, whether Z Private Limited is a subsidiary company of Y Limited, yes, it is. as well as a government company? No, it is not a government company. Had Y Limited been a government company, then yes, that private limited would also have been a government company. Moving on to the next question. So this is a direct question which says discuss the various types of implied warranty. So warranty as to non-existence of encumbrance, disclosure of dangerous nature of goods, quality fitness. These are the implied warranties which you had to write here. The next question, again a direct question from the Indian Contract Act and a very easy one, but here is where most of the students got confused because of this one term, which is stifling prosecution. So you just had to explain the terms: trafficking relating to public offices and titles and stifling prosecution. So these came under chapter 3 or unit 3 of Indian Contract Act, wherein these are under the topic agreements opposed to public policy, under the topic validity of agreements. So here, talking about trafficking related to public offices, it is basically bribing officials in order to get a secure position in the public office, or bribing officials in order to receive some prestigious awards such as Padma Shri, Bharat Ratna, Padma Vibhushan, etc. Talking about stifling prosecution, stifling prosecution in simple terms is playing with the prosecution. That is where legal proceedings are already instituted and there are some hurdles which are being created in these legal proceedings by doing something which is not allowed or which is not in favor of the public policies. That is stifling prosecution, wherein you create hindrances in the legal proceedings which are already instituted. The next question is from LLP Act. Explain the provisions relating to the registration of changes in the partner under the Limited Liability Partnership Act. So whenever there's a change in the partner, information has to be sent to the registrar of companies, and even if there's a change in the name or address of the partner, all of the details have to be sent to the registrar within the time specified. So again, a direct question. The next question talks about discuss the rule regarding a partner's implied authority to bind the firm for his acts. Also explain the situations where the partner has no implied authority. So as a partner, a person is bound by all the firms for the acts which he's doing. So we have understood the cardinal principle of partnership, which says that every partner has the authority to bind the firm as well as all the other partners. He acts as both principal as well as the agent. So every partner can bind the firm with any act he does, but the act has to be within his authority. However, when a partner does an act which is not within his authority, then in that situation, he'll not be in a position to bind the firm. Moving on to the next question. A mobile phone was displayed in a shop with a price tag of 10,000 attached to the mobile display box. As price displayed was very less as compared to MRP, why a customer rushed to the cash counter and asked the shopkeeper to receive the payment and pack up the phone. The shopkeeper refused to hand over the mobile phone to Y in consideration of the price indicated in the price tag. So what has happened? A customer wanted to purchase the phone, however, the shopkeeper refuses to sell. Y seeks your advice whether he can sue the shopkeeper. So here in the situation, there was an invitation to offer, not an offer made by the shopkeeper. This is basically a display piece with some MRP, and this was an invitation to offer. It was not an offer which was made. Offer was made by Y, that is the customer, to the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper had the right either to accept or to reject the offer. Moving on to the next question. On 1st March, T Readymade Dressed Garments Shimla enters into a contract with J Readymade Dressed Garments Jaipur for supply of different sizes of shirts S, M, and L as per the terms of contract, 300 pieces of each category, and there are different prices, 900, 1000, and 1100 respectively for different sizes S, M, and L. However, on 1st May, and this had to be supplied on or before 31st of May. However, on 1st of May, T Readymade Garments informed J that the firm is not willing to supply shirts at the above rate due to rise in the price of raw material cost. And in the meantime, the prices of the similar shirts in the open market had gone to 1,000, 1,100 and 1,200. So from 900 to 1,000, 1,000 to 1,100 and 1,100 to 1,200. Examine the rights of J ready-made garments in this particular situation. So this is a case of breach of contract. It is an anticipatory breach because this has happened even before the due date. So this is a case of anticipatory breach of contract. And since the contract has been breached in this particular situation, J ready-made garment can claim ordinary damages. What would be the ordinary damage? It would be the difference between the market price and the contract price into the number of garments which had to be supplied. So there's the difference of 100, 100 and 100. 300 pieces of each category had to be supplied. So the amount of damage which can be claimed by J ready-made garment would be 90,000. That is the difference in prices multiplied by the number of pieces ordered of each category individually. Moving on to the next question. Can an unpaid seller who has possession of goods exercise the right of lien? Yes. In order to exercise right of lien, possession has to be there. What are mentioned such circumstances? So what are the situation where the unpaid seller can exercise his right of lien? He has to be an unpaid seller. He should have possession of the goods. The buyer, either the buyer has become insolvent or the buyer has not made the payment. So in these situations, the unpaid seller can exercise his right of lien. And when does he lose his right of lien? He loses his right of lien when he parts with the possession of the goods. State giving reasons whether the following are partnerships or not. So there are different situations and we'll have to see whether these are partnerships or not. X, Y, and Z agreed to divide profits equally, but the loss, if any, is to be borne by X alone. Is it a case of partnership? Yes, this is a case of partnership. There's a concept of partner and profit. So in this particular situation, there's an agreement to divide profits equally. However, the loss would be shared only by one of the partners. X, the publisher, agrees to publish a book at his own expense written by Y and to pay Y half of the net profit. Does this create a relationship of partnership between X and Y? No, this does not create a relationship of partnership between X and Y. And is Y liable to pay to paper dealer for paper supplied to X? No, the Y would not be liable here since there's no partnership coming into existence. A and B purchase a tea shop and incur additional expenses for purchasing utensils, each contributing half of the total expense. Shop is leased out on daily rent, which is divided between both. Does this agreement constitute a partnership? So there's a tea shop which has been purchased. However, this shop is given on rent and the rent received is divided between both A and B. So division of rent would not amount to partnership coming into existence. So there's no partnership here in this case as well. Moving on to the next question. X, a furniture dealer, delivered furniture to Y under an agreement of sale, whereby Y had to pay the price of the furniture in 3 installments, and the furniture will become property of Y on the last installment. But before Y paid the last installment, he sold it to X, who purchased it. He sold it to Z, who purchased it in good faith. X brought a suit against Z for the recovery of furniture on the ground that Z had no title to it. So decide on the basis of provisions of sale of goods. Z here is a person who has purchased the goods in good faith. He did not know that Y had to pay the last installment and only then the property would transfer to Y. So in this particular situation, X cannot sue Z, and even if X has sued Z for recovery of furniture, X will not succeed. Moving on to the next one. Against B's tender, R agrees to sell and deliver 1,000 kgs of tomato at 100 per kg, which shall be delivered on 15 July 23. Due to the rise of prices of tomatoes in market, R delivered only 700 kgs on 15 July and agrees to deliver the balance quantity in next month. B accepted 700 kgs of tomato sent by R. Later, R failed to deliver the balance quantity and so B refused to pay the price of 700 kgs of tomato as he failed to fulfill the tender. Can B refuse to pay the price? B cannot refuse to pay the price of 700 kgs which he has already received the delivery of. For the remaining 300, yes, he has not received the delivery, so B can refuse to make the payment. However, for 700 kgs of tomatoes which he has already received, he'll have to make the payment. Next question is a direct one. Explain the kinds of share capital as per the Companies Act. Also explain when the capital shall be deemed to be preference capital. What are different kinds of share capital? Now talking about what are the different kinds of share capital in a company. So you have equity share capital, preference share capital. Now, if you are asked about the types of share capital, it also includes authorized share capital, subscribed capital, issued capital, paid up capital, etc. And they've also asked us explain when the capital shall be deemed to be preference capital. So when there is preference given in the payment of dividend and payment of the value of the share, then in that situation we call it as preference share capital. The next question is about mere silence does not amount to fraud. So here in the but before going to that, here in this particular question, we've been asked about kinds of share capital. So this is only two, equity and preference. If you would have been asked about types of capital, then it would have been authorized, subscribed, issued. Okay. The next question, mere silence does not amount to fraud. Explain the statement as per provisions of Indian Contract Act. So under the Indian Contract Act, we've understood that if a person is silent or if a person is quiet does not mean that he has an intention of doing some fraud, and that is what you had to explain here. Moving on, state the rules that should be observed by partners in settling the accounts of firm after dissolution. So when the dissolution of a firm happens, the account shall be settled. All the outside loans and liabilities, all the debts shall be paid off first. Then if any loan was given by the partner, it shall be paid off. Then the partner's capital has to be paid off, and if there's any amount left, then the surplus has to be divided amongst the partners equally or in the ratio agreed between them. Moving on to the last question. MTK Private Limited is a company registered under Companies Act on 5th of January 21. Company did not start business till now. On 7th April, a notice has been received from ROC for non-filing of Form INC 20A. Identify under which category MTK Private Limited is classified. Now, this will be classified as a dormant company because there's no significant transaction happening for the past 2 years. Explain the definition of the category of company. So this is a dormant company, and you'll have to explain what a dormant company is. So this was all with respect to your law question paper. So overall, the question paper was easy. However, there were a few topics which were not asked or which were not touched upon earlier by the institute, and this was the time when they touched upon it. I hope all of you have written your paper really well and hope to see you on the other side at CA intermediate level.